Hello guys, welcome once again to my channel. It's so good to see you again, and today we are going to look at something that is very topical with regards to international student applications. And so what we are going to look at today is how much money you need in order to relocate to study in the US. And so international students would usually ponder about how much money they would need in order to pursue their studies in the United States. And so stay tuned and join me for more. Welcome back. So the question of how much you would need to study in the United States is not a straightforward question. It can be complicated, and it depends on a whole lot of factors. And those are some of the factors we are going to look at today. The first thing that you need to look at when relocating to the United States to study, let's say you want to choose schools in the US that you want to attend as an international student. One very important thing that lots of international students miss is the state where they are attending the school. So as an international student, if you are choosing a school, you have to be very mindful of the state in which you are attending the school, because different states in the US have different costs of attendance due to differences in costs of living. For instance, an international student moving to study in the University of New York, which is in New York City, is going to have a different cost of attendance than an international student who is relocating to Kansas University to study. And this is because New York and Kansas have different costs of living in the cities where these schools are located. And so you would expect a different breakdown of your cost of attendance. When I say cost of attendance, what I mean is your tuition, your fee bill, and your living expenses. That's what I mean. And that can be found on your I-20 when you are applying for your visas. So the state where you choose your school to attend is also very important is very important in this drive. This is due to the fact that if you attend a university in a state which has very low cost of living, at the end of the day, your cost of attendance value monetarily is going to go down and it's going to be less. But if you go to a state where the cost of living is very high, then your cost of attendance is going to be very high. Sometimes, even if you get funding, there would be some deficits that you have to pay. For instance, you are enrolled in a school in the US and in a certain state, let's say Georgia or North Carolina, and for a year your cost of attendance for the program is, let's say, $15,000. If you are given a scholarship or funding, that can defray about 80% of the cost, making it about a funding package of $40,000. The $10,000 you are left with is something you have to show evidence of financial proof of when you are going for your visa interview. And so some states would leave you with deficits after your cost of attendance that are so high that the deficits left can be compared to the whole cost of attendance of schooling in another state. For instance, as an international student, you gain admission into two schools, University of Washington and then say Southern University of Louisiana. So the cost of attendance for University of Washington, for instance, may be $80,000 a year, and then the cost of attendance for Southern University of Louisiana would be somewhere around $30,000. And so if you are given a tuition waiver in these, let's say University of Washington gives you a tuition waiver, in Southern University of Louisiana gives you a tuition waiver, at the end of the day you would have a bigger deficit after your tuition waiver or funding has been given in Washington than in Louisiana, where the cost of attendance is not so high. And so this is something that you have to be mindful of. Now, another thing you have to pay particular attention about is funding, that is assistantship offer. And so how much you need to study in the US would sometimes depend, or most times I must say depend on the funding package that you have. If you have zero funding to study in the school you gained admission to in the US, you would have to have more money to prove financial capabilities before you are granted your visa. And the funding is very important. Getting a funding package, at least getting some kind of funding to defray at least part of your cost of attendance, would help you take off the burden of having to show proof of your total cost of attendance. Schooling in the US can be very expensive if you don't have funding. And these days, in a lot of embassies across the world, even if you have funds from family to prove that your attendance to a school in the US can be catered for, you can still be denied visa because many people show funds these days that they can attend. Many people show evidence that they can attend school in the US. Their family will sponsor, an uncle will sponsor, they themselves bring bank statements with their own names. And so you would want to get some funding to prove that you have something down to start with. And I've made videos on why people don't get funding, and so you can check out that video on my channel as well. So these are the two main things you need to consider when thinking of how much you are going to spend when you enroll in a school in the US as an international student. You need to look at the state where you are attending your school and the cost of living in that state. And you also need to look at how much funding you have, how much funding you can get in order to help defray your cost of attendance to the United States. There are some schools, however, that have very cheap tuition rates, and so these schools would have you pay very less fees and tuition and fees compared to other universities. You need to look out for these universities. I'm going to do a video very soon to list the cheapest colleges in the United States to attend, and so this would help you to know schools that have very cheap tuition rates that can help you to be able to prove more financial capabilities attending that school when you are going for your visa interview. One thing you have to do, one thing I advise international students who are planning to school in the United States is to gather a lot of funds down, because you need to have some money, because most funding availabilities that you get will not cover your air tickets and your visa fees, which you need to get money to also pay to be able to go for your visa interview. So the issue about money is not a very straightforward one, but looking at all these factors, you are going to understand or have a fair idea of what to expect when you are coming to the US to school. The best thing to do is to look for funding as much as you can for your program, and this would save you a lot of stress and headache trying to get money to sponsor your schooling in the US, because it can be very difficult and frustrating if you are in the United States studying and you don't have money to pay your bills, you don't have money to pay your fees, you are being forced to look for a job in the US. It can be a very unpleasant situation, and so you really need to look for funding opportunities to be able to do this. I hope you found this video useful. Continue subscribing to this channel, hit the notification button so that anytime I upload a video, you would watch it. Until the next video, see you.